In recent generations, it's common to hear the desire not to have children, which is not entirely unreasonable. Because while it is true that giving life to another being and educating them until they become an adult who can fend for themselves is a beautiful act, it is also true that today's society is full of dangers that make it legitimate for a young person, seeing the threats that are going around the world, to think that the wisest thing is not to voluntarily expose a child to the chaos prevailing in today's society. However, not all young people think the same way. There are still young people who, from a very early age, yearn to become parents. They know that the human being is only fulfilled in a couple and in a family, and that it is worth fighting to raise a child despite all the obstacles that may be encountered on the way to do so.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
And Camilo was one of these young people, but not just any young person, a special one who was destined to suffer the hardest trial that any human being can face, but whom in the end life would know how to reward for so much love and so much faith. The first obstacle that Camilo had to face was the lack of commitment of the women he met throughout his life. Every woman he had as a companion would leave his side once he raised the possibility of getting married in the future, having children and starting a family. It didn't matter the coincidence of tastes and lifestyles he might have with his girlfriend or how long they'd been together. Once Camilo touched the subject of marriage or children, the relationship ended immediately. But not even when he found a woman who wanted to start a family like him, things didn't work out. Her name was Amparo, and she immediately accepted Camilo's marriage proposal. But more than a year passed between the proposal and the wedding day, because the only wealth the boy had was his will, but in reality he had nothing material to offer his future wife. Camilo still lived with his parents and did not have a house of his own to take his wife to, or even a decent salary with which to pay rent. But none of this mattered to him. Camilo knew that the hardest thing was to have gotten the yes from his sweetheart. From then on, the rest would be solved with faith and discipline. Camilo began to do double shifts at the carpentry shop where he worked in order to double his salary and was limiting his expenses in order to save even more. He mended his clothes so he wouldn't have to buy new ones and stopped going out with his friends to spend less money. And every night, no matter how tired he got home from work, Camilo thanked God for his wife. Yes, for his wife, because he knew that faith consists in believing in that which has not yet taken place, and that is why he spoke of Amparo as if they had already been married. A little more than a year later, Camilo's efforts paid off. He was able to marry Amparo in a simple but happy wedding. The savings even allowed him to have a honeymoon at the beach, and upon his return they went to live in a small rented apartment. Everything seemed to be going as Camilo had always planned, but after a year of marriage it became evident that things were not going well. Although Camilo and Amparo were having regular relations, after all that time she still hadn't fallen pregnant. Since both of them wanted to start a family so badly, at first they refused to accept the obvious. They wanted to believe that they were just unlucky and that it was just a matter of keeping on trying. But the moment came when they could no longer deny it. It was evident that one of them had infertility problems. But if Camilo and Amparo thought that things couldn't get any worse, they were very wrong. The doctor they consulted and examined them not only confirmed that there was indeed an infertility problem, but he finished off the diagnosis by telling them that it was not one of them, but both of them who had the problem. To make matters worse, the treatment was not covered by medical insurance and was deeply expensive. Amparo felt faint. She supposed that this was the end of her dreams of having a family because she considered it impossible that they could afford such an expense. But Camilo once again relied on his discipline and faith. He patiently saved the money he earned from his double shifts at the carpentry shop. The couple stopped going out to restaurants on the weekends as they were used to and cooked all their own food to save money for treatment. And without fail, every night they prayed to God for the child they longed for. After a couple of months, Camilo and Amparo had barely saved enough money for the first session with a specialist, and as the treatment consisted of more than 10 sessions, Amparo assumed that everything had been useless and that the best thing would be to get used to the idea of life without children or to think about adopting. But once again, it was Camilo who kept her afloat. He explained to her the philosophy of life that had always guided him. Faith is an act of taking for granted the favors asked of God. According to his way of seeing things, what they had to do was to pay for the first session with a specialist and put the rest in God's hands. It was difficult to convince Amparo, but when she succeeded, things started to go well for the first time. God rewarded the couple's faith, and a few weeks after the first treatment session, Amparo discovered she was pregnant. There would be no need to pay for the rest of the sessions. The pregnancy went smoothly, but when the woman's water broke, everything began to get complicated, and without warning, without any message that this could happen, the hospital doctor told Camilo that the baby's life had been saved, but not Amparo's, who died during the intervention. Camilo felt devastated not only because he had lost his wife, the person he had loved most intensely, but also because he felt guilty about her death. Perhaps if he had not asked God so insistently for a child, if he had not convinced Amparo to pay for the session with a specialist, or if he had listened to her with the idea of adopting, his wife would still be alive. Despite the deep pain he felt in his heart, Camilo had forced himself to draw strength from where he had none. For now he had to play father and mother to the child. He did well to strengthen himself, for in reality the hardest test was yet to come. Benito, as his son was called, began to get sick when he was only 1 year old. Camilo had to redouble his efforts in the carpentry shop to have enough money to pay the medical expenses his son's illness demanded. But everything seemed useless, and as time went by, the child became sicker and sicker. Little Benito was not even 6 years old when the doctors told his father that there was nothing to be done. According to them, he had only a few hours to live, but Camilo did not despair. Guided by his concept of faith to take the miracle for granted before it happened, the man lay down to sleep next to his dying son and promised to take him out for ice cream when he recovered. Camilo would remember until the last day of his life, without knowing if it was a dream or something real, the heavenly voice he heard that night and that told him, "Say goodbye to pain, from now on blessings come." Dream or reality, the truth is that Benito did not die that night, and little by little and without the doctors being able to explain it, the little boy was improving. Once he was discharged, the first thing Camilo did when he left the hospital was to take him to eat the ice cream he had promised him. And while they shared that beautiful moment, father and son, he spoke to little Benito about God, about the importance of believing in Him, praying to Him, trusting Him with all of our projects, and having faith that no matter how hard a moment may seem, God will have an answer for us at the end of the road. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it and leave your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to receive more stories like this one and share it with your friends. See you next time.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.